Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at the Transformer Cybertron Jetfire, and here he is. And I'm a little on the fence with this guy. So I got this guy literally right after I had ordered my Cybertron evac, and they arrived basically on the same day. Evac arrived one day, and he arrived the next day. So, and I love my evac. If you haven't seen that video, I absolutely love my evac, and I love him as a character, as a toy. And then I got him, and he's kind of overshadowed by him. But this is by no means a bad toy. So let's get into it before I really get into what my true thoughts are. So, first of all, I love how much silver is on this guy. You know, there's so much silver paint all over this toy. You know, right there, right there. Of course, here on the wings, on the cockpit, or I don't know, maybe cockpit, I don't really know. The cockpit, these little bits on the body, and then, you know, and then just the molded in pieces for the turbines or the engines right there. And of course right there, that will form the arms. And then some silver down here. And I'll raise the camera up just so you can see it. And this is a big toy. He was an ultra class toy. So he was in between a Voyager and Leader. So he is not a small toy. I think mainly it's his wingspan. I think that's where a lot of his bigness it comes from, is his wingspan. But he does, this is I think my favorite mode. Just, it's so fun to just, you know, obviously this isn't like you know, like a B-17 bomber. It's not like a F-16 Eagle, or, you know, it's not like it's just a cargo plane. That's all it is just a big, huge plane to carry stuff. It's not like a warfare battle plane or a bomber or anything. It's just a cargo plane. But it gives off that vibe of just being so big and monstrous, is that it would be awesome to get a Transformer that turned into a bomber of some sorts, like a B-17 or B-52 or something like that. Some old bomber plane that gives off this similar gigantic energy, but is, you know, built for like warfare or whatever. But this guy, you know, he gives off that vibe without being it. And that's just what I like, is that, you know, I wish he was a bomber, but this is still cool because he just, like, so big, is so fun. And that's just what I really, really love. I do like these rollers down here, and he can roll fairly nicely for obviously being a plane. And yeah, this is my favorite mode. He just looks really, really fun and really, really cool. And he is really, really fun and really, really cool. So yeah, and now, so I think we should just jump right into his transformation. And the transformation I do like. It is pretty inventive, pretty fun. So you just unclip all of this, and then unclip all of this, like so. And then you can just extend all of this down, and then untab the, no, they don't really tab in, they just sort of fit together, but just bring down the legs like so. You split them, and then you bring them down, and then you can flip out the toes, like so. And now, if you want a Gerwalk mode, you got a Gerwalk mode. We will bring this down at an angle, and then we'll just flip this up all the way, and we'll leave this at an angle, basically where it's at. And now I'll work off on just the rest of the body. So now you'll bring this all down, raise the camera up a tiny bit. Bring this all down, and then this clip will go into this little tab looking thing. And this is kind of hard to line up because you can't push this in anymore, but you can move this. You can't push this anymore. So you just kind of, at least for me, you just have to kind of mess with it, and then you'll see it. Just have to kind of fiddle with it and mess with it just to get it. Dang it. Nearly had it. Because you can't really, like, force it, because I don't know. Dang it. You know what? I'm going to do this off camera really quick because you get the gist of it. You're just going to plug this piece into this piece, and then with that, yeah, those come out the sides for like some automorph. But I'll quick do that off camera just to get it all clipped in and everything. So I'll go ahead and do that really quick. Okay, I think I got it. It might come undone, but I think I got it. Just gonna move that out of the way so I can bring the wings up, and then you can untab that. It's just those two tabs that go into those two slots up there. And then you bring this around, and then you slide this forward, and then this is some cool little automorph. Like that, just barely pushes it out, and then you can grab it with your fingers and pull it out. And now there's an arm all done. And then same thing over here. Just do it over here, push it forward, use that automorph, bring out the fist, and now you just bring up the backpack like that and fold in those tail fins like so. And now you can just bring up the head and bring down that little cover, and here he is. And these arms are just held on by, you know, the little Technic axle pins, you know, those little blue things that like compress and are round. That's basically what are holding these on, but they're like half the size. I'm not going to show that off because I don't want to pull his arm and wing off, but that's basically how they're attached. That's why these come off very, very often. I don't know why they did or why they would, but I don't know. But here he is, and I really like him, but he does have a kind of tough time standing because even though his feet are very wide, like very wide and very deep, so is his back, and he still struggles with standing. That's why I angle his feet like this, just to give him a tiny bit more stability, because he just suffers from that. And he looks pretty good. I'm not super against it. I do love that head sculpt. It looks more like a Decepticon head sculpt to me, rather than an Autobot head sculpt, and that's what it comes down to, is that I think this mold, for me, would be better in that, you know, the big jet guy, the like Jetstorm or whatever his name was, the big gray silver jet from the 07 movie, that one, the like silver and blue one, I think his name is like Jetstorm or something, or like Jetblade or some random name, or the like brown sand, you know, maroon guy, the Sky Shadow mold, the Sky Shadow version of this mold. I think the two Decepticon versions of this toy, of this mold, would be better. I think I'd like them a bit more. Because Jetfire, as much as I like these colors, I don't know, just something about him just doesn't seem Autobot enough, doesn't seem, you know, fun enough. You know, he just is very middle of the road. He does a lot of interesting things, especially with his legs, the way they transform. But everything else is just kind of okay. Like, I wish that there was, like, that this could peg in just the tiniest bit easier, and I wish, like, if you start moving the arms outward, well, obviously that's going to happen because that hinge is weaker, but if you start moving the arm out, it's going to disconnect from this, and it's just going to start sliding around. You know, it is really clever to do that, to make his arm turn into the second turbine on the wing, but I can understand that he's good for his time. He's good now. You know, he still does what he does really, really nicely and really, really well. I'm not taking away from anything that he does, but I just wish that a couple of things could have been tweaked. And he's kind of, once you get past the legs and how interesting that is, everything else just is like, okay, I can kind of expect that. You know, he does everything like differently from the way like a plane former or like a seeker does, like turn into a plane or turn in from the plane to the person, like plane to the robot. But, you know, he does a lot of things differently, but it just still seems a little basic to me. He just seems like a big toy that like a small toy that was blown up, and now he's just lacking some pizzazz. And then his like cyber key gimmick really doesn't do anything. You know, you just put the cyber key in. And if it'll do it, and all it does is just raise up the tiniest bit, and these guns come out. You know, like, you know, he's a very this is why I say I like the robot more, is that he has trouble standing, he's got an okay transformation, more a little boring transformation, and then add in the fact that his Cyber Key gimmick really doesn't do anything, or do as much as maybe it should have. He's just an okay toy for me, and I do like him. I love having him in my collection. I got him for a pretty good deal. I got it for like $40 or something. Like, I didn't pay a too terrible amount of money for him, but it's just more the fact that he's just so nearly there of being a really good, fun, interesting toy. And he's not a bad toy by any means, but he kind of lacks a little bit of pizzazz and a little bit of life. He just lacks that. And I think that those two Decepticon decos, the Jetstorm or whatever, the big gray one, and Sky Shadow have that pizzazz. He just lacks that a little bit. He lacks that pizzazz in my personal opinion. But I still do like having him because I don't think I would have paid $80 for him for a complete one. But the $40 I paid for him, I really like. For that, he's a really amazing, solid toy. But for the high prices that I think he typically fetches, me personally, I would not pay that for this guy. I would try to hunt down a cheaper one, or I would try to hunt down one of the other molds or one of the other decos that at least suits you more, not this one. Obviously, if you like this deco, go right ahead and spend the money. But for me, if I had to spend $80 amongst all of them, I would probably be getting Jetstorm, the big gray one from the '07 movie. That's the one I would be getting, not him. But for the price I got him for, it's not too bad. And he's still not a bad toy. He's just, like I said, lacks a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of flair. He's just a really all-around solid toy. But yeah, sometimes you just need that. You need a toy like that just to bulk out the wave. And, you just need that sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what I have to say. So, until next time, see ya.